Today, let's talk about the Song Dynasty. To be honest, my feelings are quite mixed. If you ask about wealth, the Song Dynasty was incredibly rich. As for culture, it was at its peak. However, over its more than 300 years, the dynasty was notably weak. From the Jingkang incident, where the emperor was captured, to Emperor Zhao killing Yu Fei to appease the Liu dynasty, and then kneeling before the Jin dynasty, calling them uncle and master, the Song dynasty's hallmark for 300 years was avoiding bloodshed with money and solving problems with humiliation. Isn't that right? Yet, this dynasty, which was weak to the core and oppressed by its neighboring countries for 300 years, on its final day, faced the most terrifying and barbaric war machine of the time, the Mongol cavalry. It did not kneel but instead showcased the stiffest, most unyielding, and most chilling spine in Chinese history. Listen to the final cry of the 10 million soldiers and civilians on the sea, left for the Chinese land. In 1279 AD, the Southern Song dynasty was at its wits' end. The capital, Linen, now known as Hangzhou, had already fallen. The empress and the young emperor had already surrendered. The remaining diehards were protecting another young emperor, Zhao Bing, fleeing south. With no land left to stay on, they took to the sea. At this point, the Southern Song court was no longer a state but a refugee camp on the sea. Tens of thousands of soldiers and civilians were crammed into over 1,000 ramshackle ships, besieged by the army of the Mongol commander Zhang Hanfan in the waters of Yashan. Classmates, can you guess who these tens of thousands of people were? Were they veteran ironclad elites? Not at all. Half of them were scholars, eunuchs, artisans, and even commoners from the locality, old, weak, and sick. The leading chancellor was named Lu Xiufu. He was a scholarly and frail man, with no martial prowess. The military commander was Zhang Shiji, a general who, despite his title, had no formidable troops left at his disposal. Across from them was the Mongol navy, which had swept across Eurasia, leaving a trail of blood and destruction. Zhang Hanfan, seeing this, smiled maliciously. "This is like catching a turtle in a pot," he thought. "With these soft Southern Song soldiers, all I need to do is cut off their fresh water and supply routes. In 3 days, they'll surely raise the white flag and surrender." Zhang Hanfan's assessment was correct. Fresh water had been cut off for over a dozen days. Tens of thousands of people were adrift at sea, with not a drop of fresh water to drink. What could they do? They tried drinking seawater, but they vomited it back up. Wave after wave of soldiers died of thirst. Zhang Hanfan sent envoys to persuade the Southern Song forces to surrender, even bringing the captured Southern Song scholar official Wen Tianxiang to persuade them. Wen Tianxiang didn't even bother to respond. He simply threw back a poem, Zhangjiang Siming. Liu Quan and Zhao Hankun watched in horror as the Mongols, enraged, launched a full-scale assault. The Battle of the Yuan Dynasty's Yamen began on the last day of the first lunar month. The Southern Song army linked over 1,000 ships together with iron chains, a strategy known as breaking the cauldrons and sinking the boats, or the Battle of the Boiling Sea. Zhang Shiji ordered all the ships on the Rai Island to be burned, cutting off any hope of escape. The battle raged from morning till dusk, the sea surface filled with corpses, turning the water a reddish-brown. The Southern Song army, though weakened, managed to hold their ground against the Mongol fire arrows. But the tide was turning, and even the heavens seemed to have abandoned them. However, what happened next left the battle-hardened Mongol cavalry stunned. Faced with certain death, these refugees who had been adrift at sea for months, these scholarly men who wouldn't even dare to kill a chicken, not one of them laid down their weapons or raised their hands in surrender. Chancellor Lu Xiufu, seeing the sky filled with flames, knew that the Southern Song was doomed. He straightened his tattered official robes. A man knelt before the 8-year-old Emperor Zhao Bing, kowtowed, and with tears in his eyes, spoke to the child emperor. "Your Majesty, the state has come to this. You must die for the country." During the Jingkang incident, the 2 emperors were humiliated. That was our great Song dynasty's ultimate shame. Today, we must not repeat history. The young emperor did not cry. He allowed Lu Xiufu to bind him with a white silk sash, and together, the old man and the child leaped into the tumultuous sea without looking back. The emperor jumped, the prime minister jumped, and then the imperial concubines and eunuchs followed. 10,000 soldiers and civilians of the southern Song Dynasty plunged into the icy waters, hand in hand, preferring to feed the fish rather than surrender to the enemy. The next day, the sea surface was littered with 10,000 bodies. Even Zhang Hongfan, the victor, was shocked by the gruesome sight and couldn't speak for a long time. The Song Dynasty, with its 300 years of prosperity and weakness, washed away all its shame with the blood of 10,000 people on its final day. Some say, after the Battle of Yamen, there is no more China. But after Yamen, China was not absent. Instead, the 10,000 cold bodies forged an unyielding spine for the Chinese nation that would never bend again, even 1,000 years after their deaths. Facing these 10,000 unyielding spirits, I can only describe them with 4 words: unyielding to the end. If you are also moved by this most valiant and bloody tale, write down these 4 words: unyielding to the end. Let it be our tribute, spanning 700 years, to these 10,000 iron-willed ancestors. In truth, understanding the despair of Yamen helps you grasp that life's most tragic regret is not losing the final match, but standing at the edge of a precipice. Brutal stance.